Okay, Ceil, this is Fabi, and I have opened up the next design. And my point of trying to help you with this one is to show you a simple way to adjust the satin lines that you are not happy with on this design that you have purchased. So, one of the things that I want to mention once again is that I have already worked with the quilting stitches on this design, and I have made them a little bit smaller so that they are inside of the perimeter of your square 23 hoop. I did notice that they were just right up against this red border of the hoop, which meant that they were too big and your machine would not accept it. But once again, it was only the quilting that was the problem regarding the size of this block. The actual applique to create the sections of the block is fine because it's well within the outside edges. All right, so as I have already mentioned to you before, under software settings, embroidery settings, I have left these stitches as individual stitches, but it is possible to go ahead and adjust the density of these stitches. Now, sometimes it's not quite as successful as others, and I will warn you that it does take quite a bit of effort in order to do that. So the block is open. Over here in my sequence bar, I just need to come on down to where the satin stitches are at. And because this is a stitch file, not an object file, you can see here that they are all one big piece. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select it and I'm going to come up here onto the toolbar, and under the Edit tab, we can come down here and we can choose Recognize Stitches. So what this is doing in essence is it is looking at this design, and you will notice over here on the tool on the sequence bar that it has broken what was once one giant object into lots of little pieces. You see that? So let's just zoom out on the block a little bit and we will just scroll on up and try to find the beginning. Now, this is a really good example of how when the program is looking at this object and now has taken it apart, it didn't keep everything as complete pieces. That might have been a complete piece. We're not going to worry about that for right now. What your point is that you wanted to do was that you wanted your stitches to be a little bit wider, and we wanted them also a little bit closer together. So I'm going to hit the undo button because I probably should have started with that. Let's just zoom in on this block. I'm going to hit the M key on my keyboard, which brings up my measuring tool. And I'm just going to click on this so we can see how wide is this satin stitch. Well, look at that, 3.95. That's almost 4 millimeters wide. And you know, 4 millimeters wide is actually a pretty good width for most satin stitches. If we start getting them too wide, it might interfere with the way that this design looks. But you know, that's a design choice for you. You can change it later if you want to. The other thing I'm going to check into, I'm going to zoom in real close here, and I'm going to hit this, and I'm just going to see what is the stitch spacing here between these two stitch points, 0.67. Now, as you have said, you felt like that was too sparse, and I tend to agree with you. I would probably prefer to see this more down around 0.45 for the millimeters in between the two stitches. Okay, so now we have got that established. I'm going to hit my escape key a couple of times to make the measuring tool go away. I will come back up to this again. I'm going to select it. I will come back up to the edit and I will recognize the stitches, and it has now broken it apart. So this is what you need to do. Go through this design very carefully. I'm just going to find out where is the beginning of all this mess. Now look at this here. You're going to start to see that some of this is the underlay. You know, it's a zigzag underlay, and I think what I had noticed about it was it did a zigzag, a center run, and sometimes an edge run. So in order to keep you from having to redigitize this entire thing, this is one piece that I think I would have you possibly change. If I select it and I look over here at the object properties on the outline, it says that it's a single run, but I'm going to right click and say hide the unselected, so I only see that. See, it's saying that it's a single run over here, but when I look at it, it actually looks more like a zigzag. Okay, it's just information. Zigzag is good for holding down appliques and hide all. All right. Let's get this little section here. I'm going to turn on the true view off so we can actually see it. And we can see that it is a satin stitch. We can look over here at the fill. They're calling this a fill. It is a satin. Down here under manual spacing, what I'm going to do is I'll have you highlight this. And instead of 0.6, I'm going to take it down to 0.45 and hit my enter key. And you can see that it did make the stitches closer together. So another thing that I could do on here, no, I don't suppose it's going to let me make it wider. The reason why is it's seen this as a fill stitch. It's not seen it as an outline. All right, so what we can do though is we could just come in here. And like I said before, you know, I felt like the width actually was fine. I think the process of what order you're laying those fabrics down is actually more the problem than anything else. So I would just go through here and I would select each one of these little satin blocks and I would come in here one by one and change them to 0.45 or maybe even 0.4 depending on your own preference. All right. Another thing that we could look at real quickly is what I would suggest that you do anyway is just looking at the order that all of these blocks are stitched out in. All right. And then from there, kind of figure out whether or not you need to change the sequence of what order those pieces of fabric are being laid down in. So if I selected just this little section here, for example, and I decided that I wanted to go ahead and adjust the manual spacing to 0.45, I've made the stitches closer together. If I look at this under the reshape tool, now the reshape tool, when that object is selected, is going to give you all of those nodes for that section. Do you see that? And what you can do, now this would take you quite a bit of time, is that you could grab these nodes one by one. When you click on them, they're going to turn purple. All right. And once they turn purple, you can use your mouse to drag them out a little bit. Now this would see how this is changing and it's making it just a little bit wider. You could do that for each one of these little sections. Again, you know, you would have to be really careful that you don't distort your design too much. Oop, I just added a stitch in there that I didn't need to be adding. This right here, that line that shows up, that's called the wire line, and that's showing you the shape of the object. Another thing that I want you to notice, because you did mention it, was that you felt like the trim lines weren't centered underneath the satin lines, and I don't really see that that's that much of a problem. However, once again, looking at the stitch order of where all of these things are at, let's look at it under colors, you know, and just analyzing. Maybe what you need to do is place those pieces of fabric down in a slightly different order so that when these satin stitches stitch, they actually cover up. Now, I think my preference would be that the outside shapes would be placed first, and then the inner ones would be placed on top of them, rather than her order, because I think hers tended to be the opposite. This one here, she's putting this first one first. Now let's see, my screen keeps jumping around. This one here is that outer one. So I think she did a frame first on this one. But again, that's just a couple of different ways that you can actually change this density of those stitches. Okay, so I hope that that makes sense to you. As I mentioned in my email to you, Ceil, I will work on your blocks and do them for you, but it will take me quite some time to get all of that done because I have a lot of other things that I have to do, but I do want to continue to help you. So hopefully what I've mentioned in this video will be helpful to you. Okay, that's it for now. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.